I want all of you to picture a scene with me. It is November 5th outside of a federal processing center in Broadview, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. An immigration enforcement vehicle is revving its engine and trying to push through a crowd, and standing dead center in that lane is a 26-year-old woman, and she slams her hands onto the hood and refuses to budge. That is Kat Abughazaleh, and she is running for U.S. Congress. And I want you to throw out every single mental image that you have of a progressive challenger, because Kat is operating on a completely different frequency. This is a candidate who is organizing volunteers of thousands, right, on a private Discord server that is usually reserved for talking about video games. She views the job of representative as a physical act of intervention, alongside being a legislative one. The opposition right now to Trump's regime is desperate for any new direction they can get. And I think that Kat Abughazaleh, in the way that she is conducting herself, is offering a radical new direction. And what I'm here to find out in this interview is, can that direction lead us forward? Can it actually get us to the place we want to be? My gut says yes, but we shall see. We are joined today on Corncast by Kat Abughazaleh, who is running for Illinois' 9th District. And Kat, I really want to thank you so much for being here. You actually have no idea how much this means to me. I've been following you for a while, and I am so inspired by your courage, genuinely. If people are watching this hoping that this is going to be a little bit of an unbiased interview, I'm sorry. I can't hide my bias. I do genuinely want Kat Abughazaleh to win her race. And Kat, we do have a lot of specific ground I want to cover.
Yeah.
But before we get into the mechanics, I actually want to do with you what I've done with all of my interview subjects so far, which is I actually want to give you the floor. So for the next
Cool.
up to 5 minutes, uninterrupted, I want you to tell us who you are, why you're running for Illinois' 9th District, and what is safeguarding democracy actually meaning to you in this very specific political moment.
Cool. Yeah, let's get into it. I'm Kat Abughazaleh. I'm running for Congress in the 9th District of Illinois, and I am a researcher and journalist who covers the far right. I started my career watching Fox News and monitoring Tucker Carlson specifically for Media Matters. My video explainers have helped de-radicalize thousands of people and educate millions on right-wing narratives and misinformation. I was laid off in 2024 after Elon Musk sued our company for accurate reporting, and then he deposed me in Chicago a couple months later. And I've spent the time since then freelancing for Mother Jones, Ateo News, People for the American Way, and my own works. I decided to run for Congress because of a lot of reasons, but especially because I and my colleagues have warned the Democratic Party about everything that's led to this moment. We warned them about January 6th before it happened. We told them about where the DEI, CRT, anti-trans panic would lead, and so many other things like this, and they just didn't listen. And I got tired of getting someone to listen and decided to do something myself. I also spent way too much time ranting to my boyfriend and my cat about what I would like to see in politics. And so because I built my own platform, but it's still such a privilege to have. We're trying to use it to the best we can to show a different type of politics. So, for one, we are completely unashamedly progressive. I'm very transparent about my views. I always say that I want to be held accountable. I think that everyone should be held accountable. That includes me. I encourage skepticism of any candidate and always joke that you can't offend me with a question because I used to cover Nazis for a living. Um, but we also use our resources in a different way. We try to not just reach voters, but materially improve their lives. So our campaign office in Rogers Park doubles as a mutual aid hub. People come in every day to get winter clothes, toiletries, food, baby diapers, baby formula, anything they need. We also try to make sure that our events are accessible to everyone, no matter their income, and also often serve a dual purpose. Like our kickoff event, we didn't ask for donations to come in. We asked for boxes of pads and tampons and ended up collecting over 5,600 by the end of the night. And that helped directly Chicago's Period Collective. And I think that this is something that we could have been doing the whole time, but we just haven't. So I'm all about leading by example rather than just saying things. I always say, watch what I do, don't listen to what I say. And we're trying to do that in the campaign. And it's been pushing our opponents to be the best versions of themselves as well, not just myself. We have pushed our entire race to be more progressive and also aggressive against this administration. I'm currently under federal indictment for protesting at the Broadview ICE facility in Chicago, right outside Chicago. It's essentially a facility that holds people for days or weeks at a time when it's only meant to hold people for 12 hours at a time. Right now, it is standing room only. People can't sleep. They're given maybe one bottle of water a day. They are beaten if they soil themselves because they're only allowed one bathroom break per day. There is no light because the windows are boarded up with plywood. People are beaten for not signing their own self-deportations. And I think it's important that all of us see what is happening to our neighbors. And if you understand anything about the far right, you know that it never ends with them. So if you can't care about people because they're people, then make sure you do it because you care about democracy. Luckily, I care about both. So that's kind of a bit about me. I also have an orange cat named Heater. She is wonderful. She is stripy and she's so small.
Oh, that's wonderful. I want to talk about two things. One, I want to ask you if you've read a piece that was published right after Kamala Harris lost the election, which is a piece written in the American Prospect, which was titled "A Party, Not a Fundraising Platform." And it was
Yes.
this, yes, and it was an absolutely wonderful investigation. So well, really, it was a retrospective on what the Democratic Party used to be, and it used to be a actual party, right?
Right.
And I I am very pleased. I'm very delighted to hear somebody sort of articulate that there is a way for the party to go back to being a party,
Yeah.
as opposed to just being a bunch of spam texts from Nancy Pelosi or Kamala Harris or something.
Look, I'm
Um,
not a Democrat because I love Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. I'm a Democrat because I believe this is the party of the New Deal and the Civil Rights Act. And also by not playing into those same things that everyone's tired of, we've been able to experiment with a lot of cool stuff like fundraising via live streaming. Or we've sent out one of our most successful fundraising texts was literally just a picture of my cat on my computer. And then all of the body of the text was gibberish. And then there was just a donation link at the bottom. And we also give people options to opt out. So we don't want to spam people. I think it's maybe if we were more responsible with these types of things, people wouldn't be so disillusioned with politics.
you don't want to stand on the Capitol steps and saying "We shall overcome" with Chuck Schumer? You're telling me you don't want to do that?
uh, that's
Yeah. Obviously you have been very visible on the front line, notably at the Broadview Center, where you physically, interposed yourself to stop deportations. And that is an extremely powerful direct action. Um, but, the thing is that Congress is by design very slow and intractable because it fancies itself as a deliberative body.
Mhm.
And that obviously makes it an incredibly gridlocked place, especially right now. And so I think that a question that anybody watching this interview, anybody who knows anything about you would have is why leave? Why leave the front lines where you can actually physically stop a van? That's more than any person in Congress right now is doing to join a body that often struggles to pass even basic funding that doesn't also have to come at the cost of millions of people losing their healthcare. Why do you think Congress is the right tool for the sort of resistance that we both know is necessary right now?
No one's really asked me that question that specifically, and I really appreciate it. Um, this was not in my plans for my career. In fact, I was shopping around like a show slash stream in January this year. Um, but part of why I'm running for Congress is because I don't see people that have the context and understanding of how the right works in our government. And I am sick of begging people to understand. And instead, I was like, what if I'm just there and able to do that and put that very public pressure on there? Additionally, um, I think that there are so many things that people have talked about in theory, like our mutual aid work, doing these live stream fundraisers, whatever they are, but no one ever practices them. And I have, with my platform and my experience and my general not caring of what people think about me, able to do those things and able to show a different way of politics. And so this is also kind of a demonstration of what we can be doing. But also, I think that there is so much legislation that I want to pass, but let's be real here. None of the really good stuff is getting through under this president. Even if we win back the majority, that's just not happening. I do have some pitches for bipartisan legislation that I think we could get passed, especially AI regulation and limiting CBP's jurisdiction. But really, we need to make sure that we are impeding this president's agenda as much as possible to limit the amount of legislation that can be passed that targets vulnerable people. And one thing that the Democratic Party leadership has seemed to forget is that leverage exists. It feels like they're allergic to the idea of leverage and that they have this bully pulpit that they could be using the entire time. I think a really good example of this is when Cori Bush, as a freshman member of Congress, slept on the Capitol steps and ended that action led to the eviction moratorium being restored. And there are so many instances where we could have been doing this. For instance, when Elon Musk marched his army of teenage Nazis to the Treasury Department. I think every single Democrat should have been arm in arm in front of every entrance and every exit and called their bluff because fascists are weak. That's why they try to convince you so hard to appear strong. And either they would have folded or they would have started a national scandal. And it's about time. Like, we're not in the practice rounds here. We're here. And it's time for you, especially because you have so much privilege, you have so much power. You're one of the most powerful people in the entire world, for you to put yourself on the line rather than expecting your constituents to do it. Additionally, when Trump had his address to Congress earlier this year, I don't think it should have just been Al Green that got escorted out. I think that Democrats should have forced Republicans to drag them out, or with the government shutdown. People knew, they saw the messages about their premiums going up. And the shutdown caused so much harm to so many Americans, but ending it before you could get the premiums down, what was all of that for? Why did we put people through so much pain for nothing?
Yeah.
Recognize that you have leverage and fucking use it. Recognize that you have a platform and fucking use it. I'm sick of acting like we're helpless because we're not. And guess what? You can be rude sometimes. I don't care if it's rude to call a point of order every 30 seconds. That's 30 seconds not being spent passing anti-trans legislation or giving more money to ICE or giving billionaires more tools to spy on us. So
Mhm.
screw it. We're past decorum.
Well, here's my question then to you.
Mhm.
Actually, I have multiple follow-up questions. One is, would you define your potential term in Congress then as you are here to call the bluff?
Yeah. I'm here
Yeah.
to call the bluff, and I am here to help build power so we can win and actually do effective New Deal style governance after 2028. Like, we need
Yeah.
to keep a dam here so that way they're at least, I mean, the house is burning
Yeah.
and it's going to be in really rough shape, but at least we know that there is a house that we can fix. And part of the benefit of that, if it's like a silver lining, I guess, is that we've done so many half measures over the years that when you need to restore a house like that, you can't do half measures. You can't just put a brick on a roof and hope that's enough because there's no roof there. So maybe we can build something better.
Yeah. So then how do I put this? How do you actually determine when now is the time for like direct action if you are a sitting congresswoman, like whether that's on the House floor, if it's on the Capitol steps, if it's in front of the Capitol building? Like, how do you determine, okay, like I can be I can be a thorn in the side of stagnation here, or I can be actually driving the wedge? Like, how do you make that delineation once you actually have the power then?
You gotta have morals and listen to them and trust your instincts and not constantly think about electability. I think this is something we see over and over again. There's this belief in Democratic leadership and among the consultant class that, well, we have to keep being more moderate, which means going to the right. Personally, I think the center is that everyone can afford housing, groceries, and healthcare with money left over to save and spend. Everyone has equal rights. That is the center. And we can argue about how we accomplish that, but that is our end goal. And I will not negotiate for anything less than that. Um, but there's always this idea of like, well, I can't make, even from people in good faith, they're like, I can't make a change if I don't get reelected. And if I don't get reelected, then I can't make a change. So I have to spend this time calling rich people to ask for donations. Or if I think that I'm going to hold up a paddle and wear a pink shirt, maybe instead of, yelling at Trump on the House floor. If you're outraged, be outraged. Like, when people talk about authenticity, it's not showing that you're some cool, sick person. It's about actually believing something. And I think that's the frustration is you're either mad, like you write these letters about how mad and incensed and unsettled you are, but what are you actually doing to show that? Because we don't trust you that you actually feel that way.
What do you think it is that stops them then? I mean, because like, listen, I think you're an exceptionally bright person, and I obviously you've earned your stripes in terms of trying to understand the way that systems of powers work and like don't work in certain ways. But like, you're not the first person, right? Like in you would probably not be the only person that is in Congress. You might be even amongst a sea of colleagues who actually all feel the same way you do, but yet they don't show the guts. Like why do you think that is? Like, I mean, because there are progressives, right? Like the squad was elected in 2018 on some
Yeah.
pretty fiery rhetoric, and yet, and I think that you may share this opinion. If you don't, I encourage you to suggest otherwise. That I think that a lot of progressive voters right now feel malaise because they look at even the squad, who is like supposed to be a big turning point, and they either got crushed, primaried out, captured by the libs in Congress, right? And as a result, like a lot of the most progressive landmark legislation just stalled or like went nowhere, right? And like I guess in a way, it's like, why do you think? My question to you is why do you think then that some of these people like stopped or like lost their vigor or like won't exercise it in the way that you're describing?
I do think people talk a lot about like the squad as being disappointing or anything like that. And I honestly disagree with that characterization because we can't just win a majority. We have to win a majority of that majority that actually wants to do something. And frankly, especially people elected in 2018 and 2020, way ahead of their time in terms of
That's fair.
just and building power to hopefully in 2026 and 2028 we can win more with these grassroots progressive tactics because people are fed up because shit's getting really really bad. I mean, Bernie and AOC are packing stadiums across the country last year, and that's fucking awesome. But I think part of what stops it, there's the donor argument, there's the electability argument, but I think a lot of it is just programming from when we're really young. I've told the story a few times, but when I was in high school, a fellow student was stalking me, and I went to Catholic school. We had this thing called Kairos, which was essentially like a little religious retreat type thing. It's the only thing I've ever seen teenagers respect. Like if you told someone's Kairos secrets, like the emotional things you say, like you are a pariah. And at one of like the Kairos reunions, I started talking about my stalking experience without mentioning the student's name. And a teacher came up to me and they said, well, we don't want to make him uncomfortable. So I'm going to have to ask you to stop. And so I just walked out of the room and drove away. And one of my friends walked out with me and no one else did. And it was at that moment that I was like, oh, there are so many things that you can do in this world that don't have consequences. Like the two bad things, like the worst things that can happen is like you die or you go to jail for the rest of your life. And the vast majority of your actions when you are standing by your morals do not result in those. Of course, the risk analysis has slightly changed, but uh, like it's rude to interrupt someone when they're speaking on the House floor. I think we're past rude. I actually was talking to a member of Congress where I was like, look, if you need a scapegoat, I'll do that. If you're worried about being the first person out on a super progressive piece of legislation or initiative, I'll go do that. I'll take the heat. I don't care. Because frankly, if we're always worried about, well, what will people think if I say this or if I say that or if I do this or if I'm rude or if I'm seen as improper. There's like a picture of me in fishnets on my Instagram that is still on my public Instagram when I was a
Yeah.
bartender, and Republicans always talk about it. And I think there's this instinct to be like, well, that's not me anymore. Yeah, it is. It's fine. I think that I'm like kind of rambling here, but I just think that a lot of it is like this insecurity that's very human, but
Yeah.
also is just a deference to whatever you think everyone else will think. And you're supposed to be a leader, think for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that generally speaking, if I may give you my theory of like what happened to the
Please.
Democratic Party, is that I think that Obama being elected literally broke everyone's brains across the political
Sure.
spectrum, and I think that like Republicans reacted to that with like immediate reactivity and vitriol, and then they also like lost the plot, such to the point that they lost their own party into a malformation that became MAGA, and now I think is like shifting into America First and like actual Nazism. But I think that Democrats effectively had their version of Francis Fukuyama's analysis at the end of the Cold War, where they're like, it's the end of history. And I think Democrats literally were like, well, 40 years ago, black people couldn't even vote. Now we have a black president. We clearly know what the fuck we're doing.
We did
And
it. We
and
did it,
yeah,
Joe.
yeah. And I think though that they have been stuck specifically not in Obama's 2008 election. I think they've actually been stuck in Obama's 2012 election for the last like now 14 years, because
Yeah.
I think that they also held their breath like in a very baited way for those immediate 4 years where they're like, well, this could all be a fluke. And
Yeah.
I think that like they had almost an inverse reaction to like Trump's base and like Trump's party, where I think that Republicans in 2016 were like, this is not a fluke. Like, this guy is absolutely going to stick around and he is our way forward. He's our meal ticket. But I think Democrats did not believe in themselves even then, really. And then
Yeah.
Obama got reelected. And then I think they truly West Winged themselves into flying into the sun, where
The
they were,
Sorkinification of American politics has been one of the most dangerous things we've ever seen.
yeah. And I think that Democrats have been stuck in this 2012 fever dream that suggests that like they already solved politics. They just need to solve it again that way. And I've made jokes on my TikTok before that I think that Democrats like innate policy as a party, like their dream vision is make it 2008 forever, and they
Yeah.
have no way to think past that, because to think past it would be to suggest that Obama actually was a failure as a president, and he didn't actually like deliver this sort of like post scarcity, this is the American century sort of response to Bush and really Reagan that I think they were looking for.
Yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts are on that though.
No, I think that's really smart. I mean, there are so many things that you see from different presidencies. Like there are so many problems today that come from Ronald Reagan and, the carryover effects of that. And I think that a lot of times the Obama administration gets lost in the mix where there were definite like improvements, but still half measures. Like the ACA was revolutionary, but also it doesn't go far enough. I see this a lot when people say, Medicare for all, and Medicare for all is a necessary stopgap, but we need universal health care with dental, vision, hearing, and mental coverage. Um, and I think that it's part of the reason we're here is these half measures that we've continually seen since Ronald Reagan, but that the Democratic Party, especially since Clinton, has continued pushing.
You know, I one thing I really want to touch on with you is that I've seen that you've spoken about the current representation being like out of touch. Obviously, we've been talking about that today, and Jan Schakowsky, right, has been a staple of Illinois Nine for a long time. And one thing I noted is that she also seems to have a pretty strong record, like it, relatively speaking, to progressive issues. And so, like, when you say out of touch, like, are you talking about policy votes, or are you like just talking about the urgency of the approach? Like, is there something? Is there a specific moment from the last year, maybe, where you're like, all right, that's it. The incumbent has failed to meet the moment. Like, I got to get them out.
I've said from day one that this was not a vendetta against Representative Schakowsky. I very much respect her and her record. Uh, like literally the first day I launched, there is an article with a headline that says like this is not against her. I mean, I'm a Palestinian person. She was one of the few Congress people that was willing to boycott Netanyahu's speech in 2015.
Yeah.
This was about the Democratic Party and the change that I want to see, and part of that also means competitive primaries. So for me, it wasn't even about anything against her. It
Mhm.
was about look, I want to see this change in Congress. I want to see someone that understands the right. I want to see someone that understands how to use media. I want to see someone that says what they believe with their whole chest. And that's not saying that is or isn't her, but that's what
Yeah.
I want to see in Congress. And so I am running.
Yeah, absolutely. In kind of looking at her record, I was really surprised to see that she had like supported Medicare for all since like 2006. Like
Yeah.
she's like a real like she's real dynamite, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously Medicare for all is like one of the flagship issues for progressives for good reason. I mean, every single progressive challenger I've spoken to has directly cited Medicare for all as like their big thing that they really want to see passed. Um, I'm curious, given your the change in timbre that you're suggesting needs to exist within Congress, like, is there anything specifically that you would want to do differently as a freshman congressperson to maybe see to it that Medicare for all feels a lot more of a reality than what Schakowsky's been able to do, which is just like advocate for it for like a decade?
I mean, like, look, we're not going to get that through under Trump, but I think that we're at a fever pitch in terms of what the American people are willing to tolerate, which is why I would ideally like full single payer healthcare with inclusion for mental, dental, vision, and hearing coverage. And I think that, our top two issues are anti-authoritarianism. The house is on fire. We had to put out the fire to redo the house, but also basic existence, which is the idea that every person deserves to afford housing, groceries, and healthcare with money left over to save and spend. And the reason we phrased it as one issue is because they're all intrinsically tied to each other. Protections against price gouging, building more housing with federal incentives to work with local businesses, and universal health care with all that coverage I mentioned are actually more effective and efficient systems than what we have now. I mean, my partner was just in Barcelona and he sliced open his foot in the shower somehow. And he took an ambulance, got stitches and antibiotics for $125. I wouldn't even take the ambulance here. Um,
Yeah.
and so going in, I think what I would really want to do is pressure the party to think bigger. And,
Mhm.
I've been talking about impeachment a lot lately, and I've had people say, well, it's not possible with the Senate, or what's the point? And I think that we should strive for the future we want to see and not just settle for the one that we have now.
Yeah, absolutely. I am curious then. Let's assume that you are able to get something done, right? Like,
Mhm.
I want you to define though what success actually looks like for you in that first term. Like when you're standing in front of voters in 2028, like asking for re-election, because I assume that you are wanting to stick around for more than one term. Now, I only say I assume because I have actually spoken to a progressive. I spoke to Shrikat Chakrabarty, who literally said, I do not want to be a career politician. I want to do a couple terms and get out. But assuming that you are more like the rest of the people I've spoken to, can you name like a specific tangible victory beyond just like fighting or holding the line that you would want to be able to say that you delivered to this district?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about two in two separate spheres. And also, I've sworn not to serve more than 5 terms. Um, I did not plan to be a career politician. And frankly, this seems like this is the most rewarding thing I've ever done, campaigning, but it's also the most exhausting. And doing that on top of, it's a lot. I've wondered how people do this for decades and decades. And I just come to the conclusion as they stop doing it well after a bit. But back to your question.
Yeah.
So first off, Representative Schakowsky's office has been renowned for its constituent services nationwide. So we want to keep on her staff, but we also want to update it with a chat feature to make it more accessible for people because a lot of people, A, don't know constituent services exist, which is why we also want to use money meant for constituent services for a public service campaign. But B, people also don't want to leave a voicemail into the void or an email into the void. And so we want to make sure that this is as accessible as possible, as well as using a directory of direct action and mutual aid organizations like the one we've been working with on the campaign, because a lot of times when you call a constituent services office, the answer you'll get is call the city or call the state, which isn't their fault. But we have to think a little bigger because Trump is creating so many gaps in our material needs. So that's one thing I would love to institute. And then the other thing is I do think one of the key pieces of bipartisan legislation we could pass from 2027 to 2029 is AI regulation. Right now, there are 0 federal AI regulations, and it is seeping and endangering pretty much every part of our lives, particularly kids. Teen suicide rates have skyrocketed. There's a rise in mis and disinformation. Schools are being used essentially as training grounds for AI rather than educational grounds for children. We see a rise in AI psychosis, and this isn't even to mention the data centers that are leaching our fresh water and particularly endangering the communities of more vulnerable people, particularly Black and Brown people. And so I think that we need to have AI regulation. I think this is actually possible with bipartisan support because that was pretty much the only thing that didn't get through on Trump's big bullshit bill. He said, we don't regulate AI for 10 years in any state. And even Republicans are like, Jesus Christ, man, that's way too much. So there are a few measures that I can just name right now that I could talk about this for literally hours, but 3 right now. You know, when your phone asks for cookies when you open
Oh
Safari
yeah.
or Google Chrome, instead of or having that, but also forcing companies online to ask users to opt in to their data being used to train large language models. So essentially, this would just give people more agency, and it would be a relatively easy measure to instill while also holding these companies accountable for creating giant plagiarism machines that destroy our environment. That would also be paired with laws to ensure that companies like OpenAI can't just train on everyone else's work and give artists the credit they deserve. Additionally, we need to, like in Illinois, we're spearheading this Make Polluters Pay movement. I think that should also apply to data centers, and I think it should be a federal piece of legislation as well to ensure that data centers are operating responsibly and that they're giving back to the communities that they're damaging. If you're going to create harm or if you have created harm, you need to rectify that. And this also helps limit, the sheer amount of money that these companies are getting off of all of our breath, all of our work, and all of our sanity. And finally, when it comes to AI regulation, I really think that we need to focus on taxing the rich, of course, but also taxing these companies and ensuring that like they aren't profitable. This isn't profitable. And when you're putting this stuff into schools without it being proven that it actually works, with it being trained on the shit that Elon Musk is doing, white nationalist talking points and white supremacist memes, you're going to end up with an entire generation that A, can barely read or do critical thinking, and B,
Yeah.
doesn't even know what reality is. So we need to be taxing these companies, but also ensuring that their materials aren't being used in our schools, and definitely not pay for it with the government dime.
I really appreciate you bringing that up. You're one of the only candidates who's actually explicitly talked about AI regulation as opposed to just generally saying data center bad. I am curious in response to that, when social media was first taking off in the United, like globally, there were clearly Congress people and senators even back then who were like, "This is a big deal. We should probably have some laws about it." But they whiffed. I
Yeah,
mean, they spent 10 years debating it instead of just like passing laws and then seeing what happened.
yeah.
Whereas, okay, not to sound like a conservative Republican here, but I am just going to acknowledge I'm going to acknowledge a fact, which is that tech stayed in America. Tech did not go and pour all their money into Europe because Europe actually did pass the laws, and
Yeah.
Europe actually became a sort of like bastion of tech regulation. Um, I guess my question is like, how are you going to articulate to the Congress itself and also to your voters of like, no, actually, like the regulation is better than the economic gains that the companies are promising? Because like the sort of story you're going to have to go up against is the one that is being sold, unfortunately, very successfully by Silicon Valley, which suggests that like on the other side of the AI revolution is some kind of like post-scarcity economy where like all you can do is just like paint and like, you know, like have sex all day or whatever. And like I think that's to a lot of people who otherwise don't really stay up to date on how fragile this whole thing is and like aren't aware of how truly poppable the bubble is. I think that for a lot of people that story is very appealing, and I think it's unfortunate that, I mean, and I really mean unfortunate, like there are actually a lot of people who like AI slop. I mean, that's why it gets made, you know. How do you message against that? How do you say, how do you like show people the light in that way?
I mean, I think a lot of it is the bubble is going to burst. Like that is absolutely going to happen. And also, they're making it's to the point where you say a lot of people like AI slop, but then people freaked out at Porsche's commercial, like in a good way, that was hand drawn and it was animated. And it was like, that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
You're just setting up like a new standard. And so I think that people are realizing, certainly not everyone, but I think a lot of people are realizing when you see the soullessness of AI art versus what's actually happening or like what's actually made by real artists, they see the difference. But I think when it comes to Congress, you know, there used to actually be like a committee essentially that had experts in tech that would educate members of Congress about tech developments for legislation. And then Newt Gingrich got rid of it. Uh, I think we should bring that back because I think it'd be nice if all of our representatives didn't sound like morons when they talk about TikTok.
Yeah.
Um, but also, I think a lot of it speaks for itself. I mean, we are seeing such tragic cases of AI psychosis, of literacy rates plummeting, of, you know, these rampant misinformation campaigns that are going viral. And at a certain point, we have to ask, you know, are the profits actually helping people? Because this sounds like trickle down economics, which hasn't really been helping us. And instead, it's just buying another yacht for a CEO with fake money that he doesn't actually have.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in recognition of the digital environment, you know, I do want to just acknowledge, you know, how fascinating I think that your like nervous system campaign style is, you know, especially on Discord, right? Because you have like 3,000 plus people that are engaging, and
4,000 plus.
oh Jesus, yeah. I mean, just like engaging in many to many organizing, which I think is super awesome.
Thank you.
Um, but the ninth district has like hundreds of thousands of voters, right? And like
Yeah.
many of them are seniors or people who aren't extremely online. I mean, I could talk all day about the digital divide and how it manifests in our communities, but like, how do you ensure that your movement like doesn't just become like an echo chamber like for the most digital native progressives? Like, how do you translate that Discord energy to like the grandmother in Skokie, like who has never heard of a server, right? Like how do you convince them that like you are the person for them? Is it just like your in person events and like maintaining your mutual aid routes, or is it something else?
Yeah, this is something that I've thought a lot about even before launching, because I think that especially in kind of earlier iterations of digital campaigns, people rely on the digital too much, and we're just using it as a tool for everything else as well. So for us, you know, we do a lot of our volunteer organizing on Discord, which is really helpful because we can get like instant responses to things if we need. We have a lot of really incredible people that bring up awesome ideas and all of this shit. So we love to see that. But it's also yet another tool. So we aren't just online. You know, we're the first campaign on TV. We actually just released our new ad today, which is really exciting. We almost as many people that have heard about me through the news have heard about me through our ads and are impressed by what they see, which is a lot of people, once they learn about our campaign and what we stand for, are on board, which is something I love to hear. We also have a ton of volunteers. So we've been knocking doors, we've been phone banking, we have yard signs that we deliver for free to anyone in the district. I mean, this goes all the way out to McHenry County, which is a more rural area. But we're also, there's this idea in primaries that you should only cater to likely primary voters, which skews older and whiter. And we want to reach everyone, and that includes the older, whiter people. But we also, I think that everyone deserves to be represented. And so we are trying to turn out all sorts of voters. We have a huge young base. One of our polls was the only one to include, for instance, non-binary people in our polling, which we're very supportive of our campaign, but we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. And that means that a lot of traditional campaign metrics are hard to recognize. Even then, the first independent poll of this race shows that I am tied for first. Um, And there are some people that won't vote for me in a primary, and that's fine. That's democracy. We've got 17 candidates in this race. But for everyone else, expect us to knock on your door. And even if you are in that group, expect us to knock on your door too. Expect to see us on TV, expect to see us on streaming. I'm everywhere. You can't get away from me.
That reminds me a lot of how I watched Zohran Mamdani's candidacy unfold, because at a point he literally was just everywhere all at
Yeah.
once. And like I think that of course is because of his legion of volunteers, but also just like the infectiousness of his message and the ease of understanding what it was he was trying to do. So I think it's very cool to see this be applied in a slightly different way in a congressional race. With that in mind about congressional races, I have two more questions left for you.
Hit me.
But one of them is, are there any currently running for Congress progressives that you like really admire, or that you want to like make like allegiances with if you both got elected? Like, is there anybody that you're looking at who's also running where you're like, okay, that person's sick?
Yeah, we actually do have like a group chat of challengers that like I check somewhat frequently and then I forget and then I check it. Running a campaign's hard. So I don't like this is also a weird thing if you don't want to hurt anyone's race or do anything
Yeah.
without their permission. But there are tons of really cool people running for Congress across the country. I encourage people to check out, especially Citizens Impeachment. I met tons of them at the Remove the Regime rally where I spoke in DC. Their candidate page has a lot of really fantastic people. Um, I do want to give a shout out to my friend Demi Palachek, who's running for State House here in Illinois. She is one of two National Guardsmen speaking out against this administration. She is such a badass. We met the day before I went to Broadview for the second time, and she was like, I'll come with you at 6 a.m. I'll bring tea. And we've taken pepper
Yeah.
bullets for each other. She's the real deal. She is the most knowledgeable in her race on legislation. She doesn't back down for anything, and she is one of the most incredible people I've ever met.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you said at one point in this interview that you only want to serve at maximum 5 terms. So I
Mhm.
want to close then by looking forward to the end of those 5 years. Like I want you to take us to,
10 years
sorry, the end of those 5 terms, right?
maximum.
Yeah, yeah. Well, then I want you to take us to the year like 2036, right? I want you to imagine a child is born in the ninth district today, let's say in Rogers Park. And if you are successful in your mission over the next decade, I want you to say, without using policy names, like I want you to
Mhm.
like make it visceral. Like what is different about that child's life specifically compared to where we are currently on the road to?
It's going to be so much easier to access not just this district with its first off, the district is not going to look nearly as gerrymandered because we'll have federal regulations against gerrymandering nationwide. As much as I love every part of this district, look at the borders, corn pop. It's nuts. But it's going to be easier to get all over the district and the state and the country through the high-speed rail that we've installed, which is cleaner for our environment, which has brought so many jobs and skilled jobs to many Americans across the country. When that kid is born today, their mom might not be able to take maternity leave. They might be, thousands of dollars in debt, tens of thousands of dollars in debt because of being delivered at the hospital. But maybe when their younger sibling is born, that won't happen, and their medical debt was cleared because that shouldn't be a thing that exists. Uh, Now we see when their younger sibling is born that they have a lot of the same things that our peer countries do. They're given, a box of supplies to help with the baby, a check to make sure that they have everything they need, at least 3 months of parental leave for both parents. Um, Education will be paid not just with extraordinarily high property taxes in Illinois, but with federal money being poured into that rather than bombs. You can study what you want. You don't have to worry about your arts program being cut or your book being AI slop. Ideally, we would take, I don't know, maybe I sound like a boomer for this, but I do think that like the next wave in education is going to be like writing things on paper again. Um, but that's more of like a personal thing. Um, you can't get your cat declawed or your dog debarked. That's a little thing that we're going to put our animal rights thing up. Um, the internet's a much safer place to be, but it's also not limited to with authoritarian rules like submitting your ID and being a part of surveillance state. It'll reflect a lot more of what we saw in early internet years, which my younger Gen Z brethren don't remember. And the air will be cleaner. You'll have more programs to go to summer camp if you want. You'll be able to look at other countries and be like, wow, they don't hate us so much. Um, And you can know that if something does go wrong, if you have one of the worst days of your life, your parents do because they got fired or God forbid one of them passed, that there is a safety net for you and you're not on your own.
Ka Abughazaleh, everyone, thank you so much for your time here. I look forward to watching you win. Um,
Thank you. Can I
yes,
plug my campaign?
absolutely you can.
Thank you. Also, Heater, my cat, will be ruling over the United States as a dictator, and that's what made all this happen in
Yeah,
that
of course.
2036. Just want to make it really clear. So you can come support our campaign by volunteering at discord.gg/cat for Illinois or catforillinois.com/volunteer. We are a grassroots campaign. Our average donation is $30 with over 50,000 donors. We are up against APAC. We are up against developer money. We are up against billionaires. We need your help. So chip in at catforillinois.com. Early voting starts in less than a month. The election is on March 17th. I cannot stress this enough. If anything I said resonated with you and you want to see me in Congress, the best way you can help is by volunteering, donating, and sending the link to your friends, like 5 people. 10 if you really want to be cool, and telling them to do the same. You can also catch me on all social medias except Twitter, which we have abandoned because it is a white supremacist rage bait machine. And you can see pictures of my cat once again at catforillinois.com and any of the social medias you see there.
So here is the bottom line, right? So Kat Abughazaleh is a policy wonk that is disguised as a sort of a Gen Z activist, right? Like I went into the interview with her sort of expecting a little bit of a protest candidate, and the briefing that I was able to create for myself certainly created a picture of somebody whose primary qualification was their willingness to get arrested outside of an ICE facility. I expected vibes, and I expected a lot of anger. And I expected a lot of slogans about fighting, and I did get those things. I did. But I also just got a candidate who understands the water usage of data centers better than like 90% of sitting Democratic, members of Congress. And I think that what this proves to me is that like Kat Abughazaleh is a little bit of like a stress test for the Democratic Party itself, because she is not a radical, but I mean, wait, sorry. Like she is a radical, okay, but she's competent more than anything. I mean, she bridges the gap between like burn it down energy of the streets and the sort of read the fine print energy of the committee room. And I think that the opposition is in much bigger trouble than they realize after talking to her. I will say one thing, which is that I gave her a very wide open lane to attack the incumbent in Jan Schakowsky. And I think that would be the easiest playbook possible for an insurgent, right? Call the old guard out of touch and then move on. And, Kat refused to take the bait. And I think that she did that, in a way that was very tasteful, right? She like praised Schakowsky's record, and she complimented her constituent services, and then she executed a near perfect pivot. I mean, she argued that the problem is the stagnation of the party that fears competition, not the person who's running for that seat. And I think that she made a case that was very good, which is that primaries are healthy, regardless of the incumbent's quality. And I think that there was something specific that I was very impressed with, which was Kat Abughazaleh's theory of power. I think that this is where she showed me that the brand of fighter has teeth more than anything. She told me explicitly that Democrats should have forced Republicans to drag them out of the chamber, and she said we're past decorum, which I agree with, of course. And I think that the context under which she says things like that, we're past decorum, matters, right? Because she is not necessarily calling for chaos for the sake of it anyway. I think that instead what she's articulating is that she views physical interposition as the only leverage that a minority party like the Democrats have left. And I think more than anything, what I was so pleased to see was that Kat Abughazaleh in this interview showed that she has the sort of happy warrior energy that I think is so often missing on the left. And I think that if she can get voters to see that there is a wonk side of her in the same breath that there is a protester side of her, which is exactly what I think the Democratic Party needs at this point, then I think she becomes a genuine dual threat. I think that all the research I was able to do was painting a picture that was only half right. I think, yes, Kat Abughazaleh is an insurgent, but I think that more than anything, she is fierce in a way that can win. And I don't encounter that very often. I think this is probably one of, if not the best interviews I've done so far.